Got it. We're away.
We're away. Hello, welcome back to the ProFit podcast. I'm joined today by my usual co-host, Matt. How's things, pal?
All good, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. I've had a good week. It's half term this week with the kids, so we're recording this and then I'm done. I'm going to have a few weeks up by the coast. Should be really good. And we are also joined today by a special guest. So we're in the middle of a mini series of guests, and we like to bring people in from different walks of life and things that can add to the podcast. And today's no exception. We have somebody who I met very recently, actually, and went and did a session with and took a hell of a lot away from it. I'm going to try and do a bit of an introduction of and hopefully get some of the wording right on this when I introduce him. But so today we have with us, he is a Buteyko breathing instructor. You can tell me whether I've described that right in a second. A cold water therapist and does support for mental health, anxiety, stress, PTSD, trauma, and autonomic nervous system recovery, which was fascinating when I got a chance to talk to him a little bit about it when I went and did my session. I thought that would be some interesting stuff to get on the podcast as well. So please welcome Kevin O'Neill. How are you, Kev?
Awesome, mate. That was a great introduction. That's probably just covered it all. Now you can switch off now. It's all done.
And I think I got that word right. And we're going to talk about that particular style of breathing therapy. But give us a bit more of an introduction to yourself and background so the listeners know you a little bit better.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Paul. My background really is in engineering. I'm a mechanic by trade, really, and I've done varying other jobs. So worked for Network Rail for 10 years as a signalman, a safety critical role with them. And for years and years, I'd struggled with addiction. I had ADHD, still got ADHD. I don't think you ever lose that, and the sort of attention. And that led me into sort of problems with addiction, struggled with alcohol for quite a while. And plus other stuff when I was younger, but eventually quit the drink, and then found something else to be addicted to as somebody with ADHD, and that was cold water and breath work. So and then from then it kind of took off, and I started up the company Breatheolution, which has kind of took off massively on Instagram, and I've got sort of over 10,000 followers just within quite a short space of time. Within a year, because I've just kept taking people in the water really to show them how to get used to the cold. So I say I'm a therapist. I think it's a term used pretty loosely these days. I'm not a trained therapist. I'm a mechanic. But what I do every day, I've seen probably over 900 people in the water since about 18 months ago, and it's allowed me to view people's autonomic nervous systems, and it's allowed me to view how people feel in the water and out of the water, but it's also allowed me to hone in on the way people breathe, which goes back to Buteyko, Konstantin Buteyko, who was named after, and his breath method is amazing. It's the one that Patrick uses, Patrick McKeown, and it's followed all over the world, and it's amazing. It can remove asthma. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and therapy is an interesting word, isn't it? Because I think we've used that in the podcast ourselves, saying that you feel like a bit of a therapist sometimes, even as a personal trainer. Like, what is therapy other than helping people improve their well-being and their health? And that's definitely something that, having experienced a session with you myself, I could get that feeling of therapy, if you know what I mean, like improvement of my own health and improvement of my own mental state. I felt amazing once I'd experienced that cold water and that breathing that you teach. So we definitely want to go into that and find out more about it today, and hopefully give PTs listening a bit of an insight into the importance of breath. We have talked about it before on the podcast, but we've never really talked about cold water therapy. So that'll be a really interesting topic to dive into, and tell people about the benefits of that.
Just to jump in quickly as well, Paul, I think the reason that talking to Kev today will be really useful is we have had Patrick on before. That was episode 34, and that got a great response. But I think, especially with personal trainers, the type of learners we are, we're much better suited if there's something we can go and do. If we can go and do an experience and sort of use it ourselves, we then find ourselves running around wanting to tell everyone, wanting to teach all our clients. And it's great to potentially have someone like Kev to go and take your clients to, so that they can get an immersive experience. Because if you just start talking to someone about breathing, it can sometimes be met with some rolled eyes and things like that. But if they can go and have an experience, I think it really does open people up to this world and all of its benefits. So I think that's where it fits in the fitness industry, is taking people out of the gym and into an immersive experience.
Absolutely. You wouldn't believe the amount of people I told about that session once I finished it. And it is more about getting people to go and experience it and do it. I think we are very much doers in the PT industry. We like to learn by doing. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, whereas lots of people are at home, not doers, Instagrammers, Facebookers. I need to do this one day. I need to do that one day. That looks good. That looks amazing. I need to do this one day. Just go and do it. Action. Which is what you guys are all about, PT. It's all about action and not talking about it, going out and getting involved in the elements. And yeah, this is what we need.
Absolutely. So should we start with cold water therapy and why do it to start with? Because to a lot of people, it is a bit like go and jump in a freezing cold lake or something, or the sea. Why do it?
Well, there's the cold water therapy in terms of the therapy. Has obviously been used in sports for years. Ice tanks and ice cold water. Certainly, big rugby teams jumped in ice water after a strenuous game where muscles have been torn and damaged, and people know that the benefits are of getting into cold water and what it does for your vascular system. But not only that, what it does in terms of repair. What I've discovered is something a little bit different. And it's more of what it's doing to the autonomic nervous system, and everybody reacts differently because your autonomic nervous system is pretty unique to the individual, almost as unique as your DNA, because it's only witnessed from you. So your autonomic nervous system is constantly trying to find safety, meaning whatever your safety is. It can be sat on your sofa at home with your onesie on, with your kids, your partner, your dog, watching Saturday night TV with a glass of beer or whatever that safety is. The point where we're most safe, that's where the autonomic's always trying to get to. It's always trying to get to safety and happiness. And if it doesn't get there, it kind of moves up and down what they call a ladder, an autonomic ladder, as explained by Deb Dana in polyvagal theory. I don't want to go too much into that. But when you go out your door in the morning, when you go to work, you start to come down the ladder, start to come into maybe sort of a bit of fight or flight maybe, and you're wary. So your autonomic nervous system's working all the time, not like your central nervous system, like we do in sports. We think about something, we move, we have all these functions. Your autonomic is autonomic. So it's working constantly all the time, every split second while you're asleep. And when you get into cold water, your autonomic nervous system shifts more often than not, because you've never been in a temperature that cold with your cozy and your shorts on before. Certainly if you've got to adulthood. You may have been in when you were a child, but your body forgets. And certainly it does with cold water. There's a 20-month period of where your body remembers this kind of cold shock. Oh, that's what the scientists say anyway. But what I was finding was with the cold water therapies is that people were coming down. Obviously, they were quite nervous to get in initially, but their bodies would go through different shifts in the cold. So they'd go into sometimes a bit of fight or flight. But sometimes they were doing this other thing, that shutting down. Their eyes would close, their heads would go down, they'd go quiet. Eyes rolling in the back of the head and sort of, inward, ready to get out of the cold. Their autonomic nervous systems are throwing emotion and stuff at them to try and get them to come away from the cold. Anything, it'll throw anything at you. Feeling sick, I don't like it. The sensations, the burning, it feels uncomfortable, I need to get out. Yet 5 minutes after, maybe even less, they eventually settle in to the cold water. They go through all the sensations. I explain what's going on in the body, and eventually they come back up here again, near a sort of ventral vagal. Happiness. They feel safe in the water. They're like smiling. They're not vacant in the water. They become social. They become happy. You did. It's like, this is quite nice now. This is quite comfortable. And that shift is important. That's the empowerment, because normally you wouldn't get to that point. You'd normally go in and and then run off. So basically, I'm taking people through the process so they don't do that. So they get in and stay in and find comfort in a situation and safety in a situation that originally 5 minutes previously their autonomic nervous system thought was fatal.
Yeah, and I experienced that firsthand. That the initial reaction to going in the water was I wanted to get out straight away, and I came away from it thinking, how does this relate to what people are doing if they come to us as a trainer? And it's a similar scenario, even though it's not a life or death situation. It's that nervous system looking for safety, isn't it? If people are coming to us trying to take action, trying to make change, us as trainers have to respect the fact that that person feels in danger almost, because we're asking them to do something they've never done before. And it was a similar feeling for me, is that you were bringing me into this water and I was thinking, this, even though I wasn't logically thinking it, I could tell my body was going, get out, get out, get out, get out. And you had to go through that to get to that point of going, I can stay in here. I can do this. It's fine. And it's very similar when you're bringing somebody into a gym for the first time or getting them to experience things they don't really want to do or they've never done it before. It's fear. A lot of it's fear. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And autonomic. So,
yeah,
it's no different. And if, somebody's never been in a gym before, their autonomic nervous system's like, oh man, all these people looking at me and all these noisy machines, what's going on in here? There's people puffing and panting, there's all sorts going on in the mind, and it's always trying to get to safety. But again, as PT instructors, if you're talking to people from an autonomic level and say to me, look, when you come in here, it can be daunting. Your autonomic nervous system's trying to find safety for you all the time, and you may feel a bit unsafe at first. But once we start going, eventually your body will get used to it. The people, there'll be camaraderie, that you'll learn to know people, and it becomes an enjoyable experience. Anything is daunting for the first time.
Yeah. But I think it's a kind of, to get people to understand that on a deep level is quite hard. That's something that I've experienced as a coach, and I'll jump to Matt in a second for this to see what he thinks, but it's quite tough to get people to understand that the mechanics of getting fit, getting in shape aren't that complicated. What tends to stop people doing it is taking consistent action. And I think what the cold water therapy, or certainly my experience of it was you're going to be okay. I got that sense of I'm going to be fine very quickly in a very short space of time. And I walked away going, God, that's made a severe impact on me really quickly. Whereas I'm not taking people into a gym and just telling them they're going to be fine. It doesn't have the same impact sometimes. That was just my take on it. I don't know what you think, Matt.
Yeah, I think what sounds different, because I'm obviously looking at this from a slightly different perspective, because I've not done it yet. So I'm sort of looking at it through a different set of eyes. And I think what sounds interesting here is that Kev's sort of talking about this ladder that we go through on a daily basis, and how we potentially, we might come across stressors day to day that the body might not react to as intensely as it's going to do in the cold water. But I suppose what the difference here is that Kev's actually helping people work through the stressor, rather than what we're doing on most day-to-day basis is just like either pushing it out of the way, handing it over to someone else, or running away entirely. We very rarely work through the stress that we encounter daily. And I suppose this is almost like a way of making people handle the stress and making you see that you're going to be okay. And maybe the other side of that helps you see that you have got tools and ways that you can handle day-to-day life a little better and in a more calm manner. You've already got those tools inside of you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I fully agree, mate. And I think as trainers, as PT instructors, you've got to be good co-regulators, and co-regulation is hugely important when you're training somebody. I think, obviously this is not my area, but when you're co-regulating with humans, they need to feel safe with you, Matt, and they need to be feeling secure with you. So that all starts with their autonomic nervous system. We'll be looking at your body language, your face, how you're reacting, how you're smiling. Smiling is massive. And I do it as much as I can when people are nervous. And I can tell they're nervous because they're constantly not really paying attention. They're looking around for safety. They're always having a bit of a mooch about. It's obvious that they feel uncomfortable. And I imagine that clients of yours will be exactly the same. They'll be on edge, but as co-regulators, as instructors, it's noticing those patterns in people, which will help you perfect your job as well, because making them feel safe is probably the first part of bringing them through the door.
I noticed on the day you were very good at that co-regulation, and anybody who's got kids will kind of understand co-regulation as well, because that's a huge part of raising kids. So is there anything, I was almost going to ask, talking us through the process of taking somebody into the water, because you were very deliberately, step by step, taking us into the water and doing that co-regulation constantly. I could kind of see that, like you were checking in, because I did it with a friend and a client of mine, and you were checking in with both of us all the time, and sort of treating me slightly differently to Sarah. And it was interesting to just observe that as well and be a part of that. So could you sort of talk us through the process a little bit of it, of taking somebody in? Because you don't just throw people in water, do you?
Oh, no. And most people, when they turn up, they say, can we not just get in?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because a lot of people are frightened of the slow process. And it has to be a slow process so that you're in control of your breathing and so that you're in control of your autonomic nervous system. Because if you slip out, I mean, even when I watch people get in these big Wim Hof events, they're all getting in and they're all doing this heavy breathing through the mouth, which dries your throat out.
Yeah.
And not only that, but when you breathe through the mouth, you're telling your mind that you're frightened. So I always ask people to breathe through the nose, because breathing through the nose makes you parasympathetic. So keeping the mouth closed is a good thing. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth is acceptable. But breathing in and out through the nose always relaxes you, puts you into parasympathetic state, engages the small air sacs of the lungs, which are attached directly to your vagus nerve, your nervous system. And they make you feel, and it makes you feel relaxed when you breathe through your nose. Even to the people watching and listening to this, if you sit there and breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, you automatically feel relaxed. So that's why I get people to breathe through the nose, even whilst doing the sort of dynamic breath work beforehand, the 2-mode breathing. I get people to breathe through the nose because breathing through the mouth is connected in terms of your neural pathways to fear. And we don't want anybody to be frightened. Panting and puffing and panting in the gym can make you frightened. And when you, obviously from when I spoke to you last time, as you well know, and listening to Patrick, puffing and panting through the mouth reduces oxygen to the body. You're not getting more. You know, some PT instructors are still of the mindset of get loads, get big gulps of air in, take big deep breaths in. You're reducing oxygen to the body by doing so, not increasing it. Close your mouth, breathe more through your nose. That increases oxygen levels. Getting less is more. But yeah, so basically taking people through the process of getting in, I'm kind of watching what they're doing all the time, because I have to watch what their autonomic nervous system's doing. I know what they're going to feel generally most of the time. Some people don't. They don't have any attachment when they come in. They're quite, look at me in the face and they're quite happy. Some of them are smiling. Sometimes it's a nervous smile. Sometimes it's a nervous laugh. But more often than not, sometimes it's screams, laughter. Sometimes it's tears. Everybody's autonomic nervous system's different. And it's whatever it is that they're coping with at the time. But the reason I bring people in slowly and stop them is to let them feel the sensations on the legs. And I tell them how they feel. So I tell them there, you've got aches and pains in your ankles, yeah? And they're like, yeah, I can feel that. Your legs feel hot, like sunburn almost. Yeah, I've got that. So that automatically slows down the autonomic. It puts you in control. Oh, it's okay. This guy feels this every day. So this is normal. And when you go in on your own, that would be, oh God, my legs are burning. Oh gosh, I need to get out. So you go into panic. So when you're guided, that's taken away. So once you get up to your waist, cold water gets up to your waist, up to your vagus nerve. Bearing in mind, your vagus nerve runs all the way from the base of your cranium here, all the way down to your colon. It's in terms of the word vagus, it's vagrant all over the body. Connected to all your visceral organs. So this is why we have such a reaction with the visceral organs when we get cold, especially the lungs, because the vagus nerve is connected to the lungs. So it uses what it can to try and get you to step into safety again. So once the water gets up to your waist, I say to people, it's going to try and take your breath. You're going to feel it. And it does. As soon as it gets up to your waist, you feel a bit of a, oh. It's just that one breath. Just try to take it. Don't let it in through the nose, out through the mouth. Catch it. Catch the shock. But always focus on the breathing. The breathing will always hold you up. So once you get to that point, then we're up to shoulders. Hands are difficult. I tell people that your hands are going to ache. Your extremities, they get sore because there's not a lot of blood in your extremities. So they get painful and your wrists and forearm ache, but it passes. And I'm always telling people that it passes, and it does eventually, as you know. Yeah. Once your body gets to terms with the temperature and it starts to regulate your blood, your temperature, your heart rate settles, you start to find safety and comfort in your surroundings. Eventually, you step out away from that fight or flight, and you're somewhere in between. You're not here. You're not quite in your onesie on a Saturday evening with a pizza. You're somewhere, maybe not a pizza, but you're somewhere in between. You're happier, and that's where I need everybody to be.
Yeah, and I'm reliving that as you're describing all those bits and pieces there. I'm reliving going into the water, but it was interesting that gave me some reassurance and some comfort and some certainty that as we were going in, you were describing it, and it was like, yeah, and that did actually help me keep my breathing regular and help me stay in tune with my body. And I guess as coaches and PTs listening to this, you can learn a lot from just you talking through that process. There is that it's very deliberate, very assuring, very confident. And that, I mean, if we have a PT client coming into the gym, they will benefit a hell of a lot from just good coaching, good co-regulation, like you've just said there.
Sure. And it's the same with you guys for definite. You know, when you do this, when you bend this certain way, you're going to feel tightening on the back of here, on your muscle.
Yeah.
That's normal. And don't worry, when you're doing this particular exercise, you're going to feel hot. You're going to feel lightheaded. Sometimes you can feel a bit funny at first, but it gets easier. So automatically, you're shifting the nervous system. You're co-regulating with them, and you're telling them that it's okay and that you feel the same sometimes, even if you don't. Sometimes I still get a bit out of breath, even if you don't. It's co-regulation. I say to people when they come in the water, I feel cold all the time like this. I feel it every day. I don't always. Sometimes I shake in the water, I say to them, because they're shaking, because it's cold. Sometimes I shake. It's okay. It's normal. It's fine. We're okay. I don't always, but, you know, when I say it to them, it changes how they feel.
Yeah.
So as coaches, we have a responsibility to be able to change it, to change other people's autonomics.
Yeah, I hope people have really picked up on those couple of points in there about just that co-regulation. Fantastic.
Because I think where we're in a very fortunate position is we then get to see that person again, potentially that same week or the week after. So we can even start that right from the off as soon as they walk in, like, oh, were your legs feeling tight from what we did the other day? And they say yes. And you go, that's exactly what we would expect. We're going to go and do something to help that now. You know, we can sort of just pick up where we left off and immediately bring them back to that safe place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
you can imagine some of them going home. Sorry to interrupt you there, but you can imagine some of them going home and getting tight legs and cramps and saying, "Oh, this is only happening to me. You know, this is because I'm overweight. It's because I'm a failure, and this only happens to me. These aching legs. Nobody else is getting this." And they'll be in that mindset until you co-regulate with them and tell them it's okay. That happens to everybody. Happens to me sometimes as a coach. And all of a sudden, where all that goes, it disappears, all that fear and anxiety.
Brilliant. We didn't mean to go down that route, but I'm glad we did. Can I ask with the cold water stuff, before we move on to breathing and really get into that a little bit more, why do people initially come and ask for the cold water therapy? Is there a really wide range of reasons, or why do people initially come?
But they vary, obviously, because of the pandemic. I think generally people have felt more inclination to be outside, for one. With once the lockdown, people were so hemmed in, they appreciated being outdoors. A lot of people feel a connection to the water. We're mammals. Of course, we have a connection to the water because we need to drink, as you've just done. And, you know, that is the connection that we feel. We spent 9 months in water. So we have a direct connection to water. So a lot of people, they turn up, and I hear it almost every day. I have this sort of strange connection to water. When I'm near the sea, I feel calm and relaxed. It's because we feel, our autonomic nervous system feels safe when we're near water. Not everybody's. People that have had boating accidents or they've drowned or whatever, they've had bad situations in water. Obviously, their autonomic nervous systems are different, depending on past trauma, PTSD, whatever it is, you know. But most of the time, we need to be near water. But what I'm finding is that a lot of people that are contacting me have got anxiety, PTSD, trauma, panic disorder, claustrophobia, a lot of things that are connected to breathing, in fact, which we'll go into shortly, I'm sure. But there's, you know, sports, people coming in with injuries, or, you know, boxers, fighters, cage fighters, they want to learn about the cold and how this is going to make them more effective in their performance. And, you know, there's huge potential for cold to be used, obviously, on the approach to fights and things like that, and sporting events and stuff, which is going to allow your body to perform better. You know, boxers and cage fighters are saying that if they dip into cold about an hour or so before a fight or sparring, they feel much more responsive. Hand-to-eye coordination is better. They're more snappy. They're more agile. So that's, you know, that's a good thing. But for all sorts of reasons, eczema, other skin conditions. Generally, it tends to be mental health, hormones, menopause. Lots of menopausal women that are trying to get rid of night sweats. They're trying to get rid of some of the feelings they get, the hormonal changes during menopause and perimenopause.
It's interesting. So really wide range there. There's some sporting performance ones and trauma and some health problems, but everything really. Everything.
Yeah. It's done completely what I had no idea it would do, Paul. And when I set off to do this, I just took a few locals into the water, and they said, "What's going on? What's happening with you? You know, why are you changing? Why do you feel happy? Why are you happy all the time? Why are you posting all these pictures of you feeling better and losing weight and feeling happier?" And it's finding that connection and addiction to something that's so good for you. And you know, you feel amazing when you've come away, don't you? Because your body's gone through stress, and then it repairs. It's like the pump when you come from the gym. You know, guys will come out of the gym and they'll be like peacocks, and wow, they've got this pump on. It feels amazing, you know, to get all this. You know, it's the same thing when you put the body under stress. It causes adaptation, repair.
Yeah. And I think there's more and more now, more and more awareness of the need for, because you talk about like going to the gym and getting the pump or whatever, can be quite superficial sometimes. It can be quite a superficial result at the end. Like we've trained hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years, and you start to understand that there's an external result, yes, but it's very much the proper transformation happens internally. And I think things like this kind of cold water therapy and other types of therapy as well have a big place to help people understand that and to maintain these changes as well, not just to be an 8-week body transformation. It has to be a long-term change. And I think that involves very much doing the internal work. So I was fascinated by the cold water stuff when I did it. I was like, this has a place somewhere, 100%.
Definitely, yeah. And we've not mentioned it yet, but the reason it has a place is because we desensitize too much as humans, and over the past 300 years it's got progressively worse. You know, obviously central heating in the last, you know, sort of whatever, you know, 50-60 years, central heating systems have caused problems. We're all too hot, Paul, and as a species, you know, we've adapted in colder climates, bearing in mind that we all come from primates, depending on your beliefs. I have to be careful, but you know, we come from the equator, you know, and we shouldn't really be surviving in colder temperatures, but we've adapted. So in terms of who we are as human beings, from an evolutionary perspective, we've adapted into cold weather, but at the moment we're never cold. We're central heating's on. We get into a hot car with heated seats and heated steering wheels. We get out of the car with a hot North Face jacket on and go into a hot, warm Tesco's and supermarkets. Then we come out of those hot, air-conditioned supermarkets into hot cars, back into the hot house, back into the warm office. When are we cold? We're not. And the body needs cold. in terms of our existence and our evolution, we need to live through the seasons, and we're not doing. And it's affecting people's heart rate variability. It's affecting people's vascular systems. It's causing problems and connected to problems like cardiovascular disease, high inflammation of the blood, irritable bowel syndrome, diabetes. Some cancers are connected to high inflammation of the body heat. The body wants cold, give it what it wants.
Brilliant. Very, very interesting stuff. Can we move on to breath work and the importance of that? I know last time Matt interviewed Patrick, who you've worked very closely with as well, who came on.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. We had Patrick on episode 34, I think it is, as Matt referred to go back and listen to that if you want to. But that was a really kind of popular episode as well, about learning how the breath has an impact on health. So what importance does breath play in health?
Yeah, well, initially when I first started off doing this, I was doing the Wim Hof method, just playing around with that, with a little bit of sort of holotropics and how that works, constantly sort of hyperventilating. But then obviously once I did my training with Patrick, I listened to lots of his podcasts, I read his book and The Oxygen Advantage. Still not quite got through The Oxygen Advantage yet, but I'd obviously the breathing cure, I'm on with that now every day. I'm reading his work all the time. And certainly once I trained with Buteyko, I noticed there was something different going on with breathing, which is what Patrick would have spoke about in his podcast. But most of the Western world have become chronic hyperventilators. We all breathe too much through the mouth, all breathing up a chest, not using the diaphragm. There's loads of things that this is affected by and has effects on. People should not be snoring at night. And I know Patrick goes on about this a lot. Snoring is dysfunction in humans. Nobody should be snoring. Children definitely shouldn't be snoring. And snoring is, even though they've got emojis for snoring, it's accepted that it's the norm. The old man was snoring in the fairy tales. It's not acceptable. And snoring generally a lot of the time is a habit of mouth breathing at night because of a habit of mouth breathing during the day, or hyperventilation. If you're in a job where you're talking a lot, which as PT instructors you will be, you'll leave yourself a little bit more vibrant. Yeah, you're talking constantly all the time, and you'll know that after being with a client for 40 minutes, an hour, constantly talking, you feel knackered at the end of a conversation. You feel hot. You feel a bit wound up sometimes, even though it's been a lovely client, it's been nice, but you've been speaking constantly for an hour. The reason for that is because you've been panting for an hour, breathing through the mouth, not the nose. And that's, talking is one of those problems that, we do more talking now as human beings. And this adds into the dysfunction. Young lads going out with T-shirts on at night, and women, I suppose, holding their tummies in so that they look good in the shirts and T-shirts. They're holding the tummy in. You can't use your diaphragm all night. So that's 5 or 6 hours stood at the bar and stood at the pubs and doing what we're doing. 5 or 6 hours of native mouth breathing. Then you go home and you snore another 6, 7, 8 hours of mouth breathing, and then the pattern follows. And when we mouth breathe, it doesn't only affect the biochemistry in terms of how oxygen is fed to your body and the relationship between oxygen and hemoglobin and how oxygen is released in gas exchange through the body. It affects the mind. And this is why so many people are turning up to me with panic disorder and anxiety, with problems. It's because it reduces oxygen flow to the brain. And if you breathe through your mouth constantly, you're telling your mind that you're frightened. So your body releases adrenaline, which is connected to cortisol, which is not good. And if it's doing this, it's trickling it slowly for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. What's that doing to the body? We don't really know yet, but we've got a good idea that overbreathing reduces oxygen flow in the body. Your body needs oxygen; it's critical. And we've all done 9 months without air. I mentioned the water before, but we've all done 9 months without breathing. And the first thing we do once we come out is we take a breath, and we breathe 20 to 50,000 times a day. depending on sex and your age and whether you're exercising, etc. And breathing is connected to every human emotion. It's connected to everything that we do, whether we're frightened, we're happy, in the throes of passion, your breathing changes. Everything is affected by breath. When you cry, everything is regulated by breath, everything for a human being. And then you breathe all the way through until you're about 90, until when you get old, you die, and you let go of your last breath. It's the last thing that you do. Yet we pay no attention to it. Why? Breathing is everything. It really, really is. And we can do so much more with breath. And, you know, I think there's a bit of a shift. Things are changing, Paul. And, you know, things are changing about breathing. And the more you breathe through the nose, the more oxygen you're getting. The more you breathe through the nose, the more oxygen releases into your body, the more efficient you become. And the more your athletic performance improves. It goes without saying. You know, I've had asthma for 40 years. And like Patrick, you know, he had asthma all his life. And his symptoms for it now are almost minimal. Mine are the same. I used to use a blue inhaler every one or 2 days. Not used an inhaler for nearly 11 months. And the only reason that's happened is because I've changed the way that I breathe. I tape my mouth closed at night to make sure that I'm nasal breathing. And I know that's it's one of those laughing moments, but I put this stuff on my mouth, this 3M micropore tape.
I do the same every night, Kev.
I'm pretty sure Matt does it as well. Yeah.
Because I was treated as asthmatic for years, and then I was very, very lucky that one day, I say I was lucky, my old GP died, and I had to go to a different one, and this new one said to me, "You've not got asthma, you just breathe through your mouth. That's all that's wrong with you." And thank the Lord, it sort of put me on this path of wondering what's this got to do with anything. And you know, I've not used an inhaler in, you know, well over a decade. Been really, really lucky to discover that at a young age. But I still tape up every night, because if I don't, even if I've not used my mouth breathing all night, I can tell a difference. I don't wake up with the same energy.
No, this is the thing, yeah. And although, you know, I mean, what a great doctor, first of all, whoever that doctor is. I mean, that, you know, look at the difference that's made to your life just by those few words. You know, you're breathing too much through your mouth. It's simple, isn't it? Yep. And all doctors know it. I mean, I've taken 4 GPs in the water, and 3 of them you ask, which is the best to breathe through your mouth or your nose, and 3 of them say any. And 1 of them says your nose. So there's indifference there, isn't there, with the medical profession and their training. Oh no, they can't know everything. You know, they're not going to be experts in respiratory health. They're not going to be experts in everything, because it'd be far too much for one human to learn. But breathing is really something that needs looking into more. And you know, I'm working with, you know, some people now that they've had up to 50% reduction in inhaler use, maybe 4 or 5 weeks of taping up and nasal breathing. 50%. These guys have been on inhalers most of their lives. People that are snoring, that have sleep apnea, have got reduced apnea by taping up at night. You know, of maybe avoiding going on a CPAP machine, which is a life-changing event. So, you know, breathe through your noses. Hello? Somebody's door knocked there.
Sounded like it, didn't it? Yeah, I don't know where that came from. It's one of the GPs wanting to come in.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, that's awesome to hear that there are GPs out there who are taking breathwork serious. We have similar crossover for things like nutrition within personal training as well. Like you said, doctors can't know everything. It's not that the people are to blame or there's any blame being placed anywhere. It's just having more of a spotlight on things like breath, nutrition, prevention of illness, and get prevention of these things in the first place. And breath is certainly one that we hope more people pay attention to.
I think these things are becoming more important now as well, I think, because for years and years, especially in our industry, Paul, I know you'd agree with this, is that we've spent years trying to get people to do things they don't already do. We're trying to introduce people to new things. And I think now our thought process has changed a little into thinking, why don't we just do a better job of the things we already do? Why don't we find a path to health through those things? You know, if you already eat, let's eat better. If you already breathe, let's breathe better. If you already sleep, let's sleep better. Then we can talk about doing more exercise and being more active, and maybe you'd be in a better place to do those things at that point. But I think it just makes sense now when you look at how busy everyone is and the amount of responsibilities people have. It's just a case of let's optimize what you already do.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's spot on. Yeah. And breathing is just, it's affecting so much, really. You know, even things like ADHD in children, there is a connection between overbreathing and ADHD in kids and special educational needs. And no doubt Patrick would have said this, but they did a survey in Stratford-upon-Avon in 2008 with nearly 11,000 children. And at the end of that survey, it took them 10 years to complete the survey, but they were trying to see if there's any connection between overbreathing and special educational needs. And I think it was high 40% of the kids that ended up in special educational needs, a lot of them ADHD, were all mouth breathers, snorers. So there is a direct connection. And if kids are snoring and they're mouth breathing and they're not sleeping all that well at night because of the mouth breathing, they've got no attention at school the next day. They've got no energy. They're going to be disruptive, you know. So let's look at that as well before hammering kids with Ritalin to try and change their mood, and before giving people things like, you know, SSRIs and antidepressants, and going to the doctors. Like you say, let's try and, you know, do something a bit more preventative. Let's try and focus on the things that we do, like Matt said, but improve them. Nutrition, breathing, you know, simple stuff, isn't it? But it could save the NHS, you know, millions and millions of pounds in treatments a lot of the time that are not needed. And certainly steroid inhalers. I mean, it's a multi-million pound operation, steroids, inhalers, HRT, Ritalin, SSRIs, antidepressants, sertraline, citalopram, fluoxetine. You know, they're making some people very rich, but, you know, it's not always the best for humans. They just blanket the initial reasons for these flare-ups.
And there's all the dental implications as well, isn't there, Kevin? I know that was something that I've read about and that Patrick mentioned as well briefly, is that especially in children, if they're doing the mouth breathing, they're not forming the palate properly as well. And that's why we're seeing a lot of kids with braces and tooth removal and things like that as well. There's a whole other side to the medical industry that's being impacted as well because of it. Yeah,
massively. Yeah, and they knew about this. You know, there was a book come out for orthodontics in about 1906. The Dental Cosmos, I think it was, and they knew then that mouth breathing affected upper cranial facial development in children. But not only that, breastfeeding, one of the things that we've changed, and that we've changed dramatically since the 1980s, and it's kind of got, you know, more and more accepted now that it's easier just to bottle feed than it is to breastfeed. One of the most natural evolutionary things that we do is to feed from our mothers. All right, it's not always possible. There are times when women can't breastfeed their children. There are implications. There's the complications. We have the technology now to deal with those complications a lot easier, I might add. But even when a child latches onto a breast in breastfeeding, it's forcing the tongue in the roof of its mouth. It's widening the upper palate. And when it latches on, it stays latched on and it breathes through the nose. Whereas generally when you feed a baby with a bottle, whether it's anti-colic or a special bottle, whether it's banana shaped, it doesn't matter. They tend to come up for air on the mouth. Whereas when a baby latches on, it stays breathing through the nose. All these little things that we change about humans are having an impact on how we breathe and having an impact on how we co-regulate with our mothers. And not only that, and how mothers co-regulate with their babies. Look at the statistics of postnatal depression because women haven't breastfed their babies. There's something missing and it's all being changed. And we think it doesn't make any impact, but it's having a huge impact.
Really interesting. It's restoring some of those primal instincts a little bit, isn't it? And then getting back to what we should be doing, if you like. Sure. For people who are listening now thinking, well, how do I start with breath? What could they do practically to start working on their breath? I
think the first thing because obviously, like you said at the very, very beginning, Paul, is that somebody says, get into breath work. They call it breath work these days. It's just breathing. And, and the thing to do is to sit with yourself. And a lot of the time, people's minds are so wound up by overbreathing, because overbreathing through the mouth reduces oxygen flow to the brain. You start to get a lot of this catastrophizing and worrying all the time, overthinking, the overthinking mind. And the overthinking mind is a moving target. It's part of your autonomic. It's difficult to get it to shut down. Anybody will tell you this. The Dalai Lama, the Buddha himself, people in the past, some days are just not good days. But if you sit with yourself and sit with your breath and be in the moment and be in the now, as opposed to being a prisoner to that constant sort of premeditating and predicting the future and going over the past too much. That seems to be the general problem. So I would say to anybody that wanted to start off with breath work was just to sit in a quiet room and listen to your breathing. Close your mouth, breathe in and out through your nose, and feel the air as it passes your nostrils. As it passes your nostrils, it will be cool and cold as it goes in, enters your lungs. You'll feel it going through your nasal cavity. You'll feel it going past your throat at the back and down into your lungs, cold air. And then as you breathe out slowly, you'll feel hot air. Maybe put your finger underneath your nostril. Feel the heat as your body heats up that warm air. But listen to the breath. Feel it as it expands your chest cavity. Feel it as it alters the shape of your upper body. Connect your mind to your body in a unique way. Feel everything. And I think this is a lot of the problem now, is that people are finding breath work beneficial because a lot of the time their heads are severed from their bodies. They don't know how they feel. And this is one of the problems connected to too much teenage suicide. They don't understand how they feel. Their autonomic nervous systems are going into shutdown because they're so wound up. The minute you sit with breath, you understand how you feel, and knowledge is power in terms of how you're feeling. Pills don't do it. Understand what your body's trying to do, but understand what your mind's doing. Sit with your breath. And obviously there are things out there, there are apps you can get and podcasts, but do tap into these instructors, reliable instructors that understand breathing. Sometimes it can be lost in yoga. Now, this isn't a stab at yoga, but the ancient teachings of breath work are being lost by taking big, deep breaths in through the mouth. And some yoga instructors are still telling people to breathe through the mouth. Breathing through the mouth tells your mind that you're a bit frightened sometimes. So that isn't going to be relaxing. Breathing through the nose engages the vagus nerve, makes you parasympathetic. So do more nasal breathing, breathing in and out through your nose. Listen to your breath and slow down your respiratory rate. People talk about box breathing. Box breathing is really good because it allows you to focus a lot on your breath. Breathing in for 6, holding for 6, breathe out for 6, hold for 6. It may cause a little bit of suffocation. You may start to think as though you're not getting enough air, but go with it. All you'll ever do is take another breath. You're not going to stop. Just breathe nice and gently. The more you slow your breathing down, the better you'll feel.
Yeah. It's amazing. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's amazing how many people will not take that 10, 15 minutes for themselves each day.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're looking 15 minutes each day can be the difference. And between you making an appointment at the doctor, I don't feel very well. I feel hot. I feel wound up. I think I'm anxious. Listen to your body. Listen to what it's telling you. The tablets will take the edge off it. And of course, there are times when medical intervention is needed and medication is needed. I've been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs at a time in my life where I needed them. And they did something for me before I knew about breath work or altering my breath. So they are needed on occasions, but there are far too many occasions when they're not needed. And, people are coming to me in their early 20s and saying that they've been on antidepressants since they were 50 and they can't come off them because they're addicted to them. And that's tragic. So, we need to stop that from happening. And really, this is why I'm trying to get into schools at the moment, Paul, is to just tell teenagers, look, focus in, learn about your autonomic nervous system, learn what's going on in your body, learn what overbreathing does. Time you feel panic or anxious, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, close your eyes, breathe slowly in and out through your nose. Your panic will stop. It will.
Yeah. I was listening as well to about, you talk about people not having that mind-body connection. It's such an important thing, not being able to understand their feelings and their emotions and their connection from the mind to the body is a huge thing these days, and something that I hope more people start to work on. And that goes for a health and fitness journey. It might be that, you know, if a client's come in, just for PTs listening to this right now, if clients are coming in saying they want to get slimmer, they want to get fitter, they want to get healthier, that is going to start in their mind. And that's going to start by connecting their mind to their body and understanding how they feel and giving them that vocabulary. So breathing is going to be a huge part of that, a huge part. And I bet most of those people don't spend 15 minutes a day with themselves. I bet they don't currently do that.
No. I mean, a lot of people are getting into this Wim Hof style breathing now, which is okay, you know, and it's a stressor exercise on the body. That's why people are feeling amazing with this breath work, because they're hyperventilating for 2 minutes, and then they breathe out, and then they, with their lungs empty, the breathing that we did, the breath work that we did, they're breathing out, and then they're holding the breath up to 2 minutes, and this switches the body out, the autonomic nervous system. And it's, you know, it switches it out in quite a unique way. You go a bit deaf and everything sort of eventually comes back around again. It's a bit of like an out of body experience. It's a bit unusual if you've never done it before. Because you feel lightheaded and you feel tingly and you're changing your biochemistry. Your body's thinking, whoa, what's going on here? It's throwing chemicals all over the place. You know, and you're reducing CO2 levels in the body quite dramatically so that there's no instinct for the diaphragm to drop. So, you know, when people say, oh, you load your body with oxygen, that's not happening. You know, by panting and over breathing through the mouth, you're not getting more oxygen, you're getting less.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Kev, we've been talking for an hour. It doesn't feel like it.
No, that's flown by.
But that has absolutely flown by. And it's been really, really interesting to go into those two areas today with you, cold water and breathing. And I hope that everybody listening has really taken some key points away from that, and some simple practical advice as well, like 10, 15 minutes a day with yourself. So simple, but it would make such a difference, and start with the things that you're already doing. Before we kind of sign off today, it'd be good to let everybody know where people can find you and where you do most of your work, and Instagram handles and all that business.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, obviously, you can see Breatheolution on Instagram, or you can see some of my work on breatheolution.com. I don't get much time to go onto my website because I do everything myself, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur with technology, so I'm not brilliant. But you can see some of the stuff that I do, and you can contact me through that as well. If you have any issues with your breath or even asthma, obviously, because I'm a Buteyko coach as well. So just, you know, anything at all, connected to your breath, your breathing, any anxiety, panic disorder, trauma. Sometimes this can help. It's not going to help for everybody, but sometimes it can. Okay, so it's worth doing this. It's worth getting into the cold water. It's worth doing some breathing before going taking tablets, before visiting the doctor. Just see whether this is your thing. It's not for everybody, but your autonomic nervous system might be great for it.
Brilliant.
And we'll make sure that we sort of tag Breatheolution and everything when we post this out, so it'll be nice and easy for everyone to find. Yeah. I don't think Kev needs any help gaining any more followers at the minute. He's doing a great job of that with all the stuff that he's sharing. It's great to see it flying, mate. I think it's good to see that people are becoming more aware of it. I think that's a big thing now, is raising that awareness of this sort of stuff. It's great to see someone doing a really good job of that.
Yeah, well, I think, thanks so much for that. It's done what I had. I had no idea it was going to do this, Matt, and I have no idea how many followers I've got at the moment. You know, people just go on. I don't do many posts myself anymore. They just go on and post their experience with me, and that's what must make the followers go mad. I'm not into algorithms. I don't know how they work. I don't know how to get more followers. I'm constantly getting messages all the time saying, do you want 20,000? I thought, crikey, no, I've got enough with the ones that I've got. I can't answer all the messages, and I need to duplicate myself. But it's all good fun, it is good fun. Some of it's hard work, I'll be honest. There's lots of things that I read and that I listen to that are hard to listen to sometimes. But I love doing what I do. It's brilliant. I just keep taking people in, mate.
Well, keep up the good work. You're doing a fantastic job, and it's been a privilege to have you on today, Kev. And no doubt we will have you on again in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's been an absolute pleasure, boys. Thanks so much. Cheers, Paul. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Kev. Cheers, Kev.
Nice one. Have a great day.